Peace and blessings to you all. This is a new day for you, and I am Dr. Raul Richardson here on Nspire You on Air, the new beat of the Bay. And joining us today, much as I told you in the earlier part of our introduction, is the Executive Director of the Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, my dear friend and a fearless advocate for all things wonderful in our community, Gwendolyn Darty. Gwendolyn, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Dr. Raul?
I am feeling groovy, and I'm just so glad that you were warm and receiving of our gracious invitation to join us today on A New Day for You to share information with our loyal listeners about the Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, MAIC. So, Gwen, tell our loyal listeners, who is Gwendolyn Darty and why should they care?
Well, Gwendolyn Darty is an advocate, a concerned citizen, and most of all, a dedicated servant. So we should care, you should care what we do at Mobile Area Interfaith Conference because we give our neighbors a second chance. That's who Gwendolyn Darty is.
I like it. I love it. I want more of it. That's very good. So what exactly does MAIC do in terms of the second chance business?
Well, Mobile Area Interfaith Conference has been in existence since 1979. One of the things that most people don't know, Mobile Area Interfaith Conference started the Homeless Coalition.
Wow.
They started Feeding the Gulf Coast, which was then a very small organization that's all over the Gulf Coast now. And then they decided to get involved in justice. And when I say justice, it meant that there were a lot of people who were not fairly treated. So the board came up with the idea, let's go into Metro Jail. And they did. We had a chaplaincy program that was started there. MAIC built the chapel with some funds from the community. And then they realized that we were just serving the individuals in the jail, and that was not enough.
Right.
So in 2016, the board decided, let's do a post-release program. And that's when we did the Neighbor Center. And I came on board as the person that was working with the Neighbor Center. And in 2020, the board decided, well, we need something more than just pre and post. We need to have an academy so we can get our individuals into the community and back at work. So we are a 3-tier program under MAIC.
Wow.
And we help individuals coming back into our community for Metro Jail, state prisons, and also federal prisons.
Well, I tell you, and I don't know if our loyal listeners are aware of this, but before I met you, I had no idea that there was a difference between jail and prison. And for folks, if you don't know, we always hear that people are innocent until proven guilty. Well, the Metro Jail is filled with people who have not been adjudicated yet, and as a result, they've not been convicted of a crime. If in fact they are convicted of a crime, then they would be directed to prison. So right now they're kind of waiting for their trial. So that is a very important distinction that I had no knowledge of before I met you. That's tremendous. And you talked about this Neighbor Center. What exactly does the Neighbor Center do?
Well, the Neighbor Center is there to help individuals coming out of jail with housing. We do direct services in terms of clothing, gas cards, bus passes, but our most important job is to help those individuals coming out of jail get shelter. And we do that through 2 grants. One is through ADECA and one is through COC. And they are the same but different. The one from ADECA, we can pay all arrears for our neighbors as long as they're not in collection.
Wow.
Our COC program, we pay the deposit, the first month's rent, and then we pay a shared part of the rent for the full year. So that is very important for people coming back into the community with very little resources to know about.
Wow. And it's amazing because I've often thought about people that get arrested, let's say out of the state that they're originally from. So if you were from Michigan and you got arrested in Alabama, chances are you're not going to have a lot of people coming to visit you in Alabama while you're in prison. Not to mention that more often than not, I've got to imagine that some of the family members of some of these folks may not necessarily be warm and receiving to them when they come out of prison. And so the access to resources, identification, it's just amazing to me that the work is being done over at MAIC. So tell us, and by the way, folks, if you're just joining us, you're missing out on a treat. Joining us today here on A New Day for You is Executive Director of the Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, AKA MAIC, is Ms. Gwendolyn Darty. So Ms. Darty, tell us, what are some of the things that are going on now that you might want our loyal listeners to be aware of? You're educating them a lot about housing and reform and the benefits that the organization provides, but what are some of the other things you want to share?
Well, recently we had a destination reentry program, and that was where employers were invited to meet with some of our neighbors so they could talk about what MAIC had done for them. And it's amazing when we have our neighbors say, well, if you had not been here, where would I have gone?
Right.
It's amazing when they say, if you were not here, would I have gotten a second chance? So we're busy trying to not only promote, but educate people that everyone deserves a second chance, sometimes a third and a fourth chance.
Yeah, but for the grace of God, go I can agree with that.
Recently, we were also invited to participate in a simulation that was held in Orange Beach that dealt with showing federal probation officers the barriers that individuals run into when they get out of jail. And that's most amazing to me when I hear officers, judges, or attorneys say, I didn't know it was this hard. It's very hard.
Yes, yes. Not to mention the fact that when people come out of prison, sometimes they don't have any of their identification. You know, it's amazing to me that the prison system keeps an active Medicaid case for them when they're incarcerated. But as soon as they're released to go back into the community, now they don't have health insurance, they don't have housing, they have no documentation, and you can be rearrested for walking around the streets without proper documentation. So all of those services provided by your organization is of critical importance to people trying to return to normalcy as citizens returning to the community.
And you mentioned identification. We do a lot of identification purchases for non-driver's license and also for driver's license. One of the things that in order to get services, you need an ID, you need a social security card, and sometimes a birth certificate. Our agency assists with providing our returning neighbors with all those documents. And so we're very proud of that.
I love the fact that you keep referring to these returning citizens as our neighbors. And in many cases they are. So it's nice to hear the love, the compassion, the empathy in your voice. Now, you know, it's interesting. You didn't share this, but I think my understanding is that you came into this work with a very unique perspective from your professional life. Would you share with our loyal listeners a little bit about that?
Well, I was a psychiatric social worker for many years. And then I worked at the Center for Fair Housing for years. And
the wonderful Teresa Fox Bettis and her team.
Right. And her staff.
Yes.
And then I guess I was called by Dan Williams, who is my mentor and my friend. And he said, Gwen, I have the job just for you. And I started off as a part-time employee with the Neighbor Center. And I am thrilled to say, even my grandsons say to me, Mimi, this is the best job I know you've ever had because you love it. And I do love it because it is a passion. It is a service, and we are giving back to people in our community.
Wow, that's awesome. And you know, the elements of it, the giving back, the Matthew 25 reference about when I was hungry, you brought me food. When I was thirsty, you brought me drink. When I was in prison, you visited me, are all embodied in MAIC. So, wow. I guess let's talk a little bit about what's on the horizon for MIC. What are some of your visions for the future? What other things do you have going on in the community?
Well, in the very near future, as a matter of fact, next Thursday, December the 8th, MAIC will have its second annual gala, and it's going to be at the atrium at Government Plaza.
Okay.
We have it on our Facebook page, our website. And if you want to come, tickets are $65 for individuals and $100 for a couple.
What a
And
bargain.
this,
Okay.
and this is a way of showing gratitude and also the respect we have for the individuals who are donors and are participants in our program.
hmm So this is a kind of a major fundraiser then. So
It is
so you're gonna have food and entertainment,
live music,
live
live,
music. Okay. You
yes.
know, music is right where I'm at. You got me on the music part right there. You know, it's also interesting that you shared, you know, the neighbor component, the love, the compassion, the caring, the servant leadership dynamic, which of course I'm a huge fan of. Um, tell me about, you know, where you guys located, what your website is, and you know, how can we get more information about all of this?
Okay, we're located at 2754 Marvella Drive, and that's right off Government Street. If
Mhm.
you're coming from downtown, once you pass the Greyhound bus station and the McDonald's, we are about 2 streets up.
Mhm.
If you're coming from West Mobile, once you pass Pleasant Valley, we're 2 streets down. Our telephone number is 251-308-8725. We are on Facebook, and our website is www.Mobile Area Interfaith Conference.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, we just have a few minutes left, and there's so much more I know that we could share. And I think it's really an exciting opportunity to provide those citizens returning, those neighbors that are returning, an opportunity to get access to housing and be supported in some way, and you know, have ministerial effects of the chaplaincy available, which is kind of a unique thing to think about, having a chaplain inside a jail system. And
Okay, we're one of the only programs that have a chaplaincy inside the jail in the
wow,
state and maybe the country.
wow.
And Dr. Raoul, not to interrupt you, but the other thing is that we believe in wraparound case management. We not only have case managers, but they are MSW,
hmm
Master Social Workers. So we believe that professionals can provide services for those individuals and know what they need and help the total person.
Well, I love it because, you know, I often have these conversations with some of our elected officials, the mayor, director of public safety, Lawrence Batiste, and police persons, and they're always talking about, you know, violence prevention within the context of youth and things of that sort with adults perpetrating crimes in community. But we know that those folks are perpetrating crimes because there's a sense of desperation, which is a direct reflection of the poverty that we have in our community. So if we can help people earn a living wage, return safely from prison back to the community, find housing, restore the relationships with their family, then there's probably a high chance that they're not going to go back to prison and get into more trouble. And we can provide them a real resource in the community to help them find their way back. So I'm just thrilled and delighted about that. As a closing thought, Ms. Darty, what do you want to share with our loyal listeners? And folks, I don't know what to tell you. You blew it. You missed it. You should have got here earlier, because here on A New Day for You, Ms. Gwendolyn Darty, Executive Director of the Mobile Area Interfaith Conference, has shared with us about the Neighbor Center providing housing, the Academy providing job training and readiness, and a unique perspective from the standpoint of a jail with a chaplaincy in it to meet the faith-based needs of any of the people that are finding themselves detained in the Metro jail. So closing thoughts, what would you like to share, Ms. Darty?
I would like to share 3 closing points. First, we have graduated more than 217 adults with GEDs from the chaplaincy program.
Remarkable.
With the help of Goodwill. From the Neighbor Center, we have housed over 244 individuals and families. From the Academy, we have secured employment for more than 75 individuals, understanding the Academy just became a program in 2020.
Wow.
However, there's always work and laborers that are needed. So if you want to volunteer, we ask you to give us a call at 251 308-8725. Nothing is too small and nothing is too great. And it has been my pleasure to work and be a part of Mobile Area Interfaith Conference. However, there is time for new leadership. And I want to say that God has given me the time to do some things. I want to be there to share some time with other people. And thank you.
Well, amen to that. And on the message about volunteerism, I think it's an appropriate time to give a shout out to our dear friend Linda Herm, who is always laboring in the vineyard to accomplish great things for our community. Gwendolyn, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining us here on A New Day for You. It's been my great pleasure to hear the wonderful work that your agency is doing throughout our community, helping people find their way back.
And thank you so much. I have really enjoyed the conversation.
You bet. Well, don't you dare move. We're going to talk a little bit more. Folks, we're going to take a little break to pay the bills, so to speak, and give me a minute to kind of finalize my chat with Ms. Darty. So don't you dare move. We got great music on its way as we seek to inform, entertain, and ultimately inspire you.